A couple of weeks ago, I talked about the films that I really enjoy, films that I believe could be considered the greatest of all time. At least in my opinion. And for a little behind the scenes, while I was making that list, I found that a lot of the spots in that list were being given to films that belong to some kind of franchise or extended universe. And so in order to combat that, I decided that that list was only going to be comprised of independent films, or films that don't belong to an ongoing series. But after that video released, a couple of people in the comments section were interested in hearing what kind of franchises I enjoy in the movie space as well. And so today we are going to be going over the film series or cinematic universes that I find so enjoyable, and also why I think that they are so great. And in doing so, I will probably also discuss my favorite films from said series or franchises. Series is a word, right? And before we get into that, I just want to let you know that for the most part, these rankings are going to be based on my experience and my enjoyment of the franchise as a whole. And these are all my personal opinions. An argument could definitely be made that some of these should rank higher or lower just based on, I don't know, the Rotten Tomatoes score or something, but this is purely my opinions. At the end of the day, the only criteria for this ranking is what series would I rather watch. And so with all that said, thank you so much for watching, and let's get into it. Beginning at number 15 with the Star Trek movies, specifically the trilogy done by J.J. Abrams and the other director who did the third one. Although I do love the original movies as well. This reboot managed to be so faithful to the characters and the world of Star Trek, but also tell its own unique story. And I'm going to be saying this a lot in this video, by the way, but the casting was just perfect. And our modern techniques for sound design and CGI gave Star Trek a revamped, but still very much tonally the same, feeling. I don't know if that made sense. It's like Star Trek, but with updated graphics, which is great. And I'd probably have to say my favorite from this trilogy is Into Darkness, the second one. Benedict Cumberbatch made such an incredible villain, and it's also my favorite story out of the three. I love Star Trek stories that involve enemies and corruption within the Federation itself. Even in an idealized sci-fi future like the one in Star Trek, the greatest enemy to any organization is greedy, corrupt, power-hungry people. I love the reboot trilogy so much, and it's something that I enjoy watching at least once or twice a year.
You should have let me sleep.
Speaking of beloved sci-fi franchises, number 14 on the list goes to Star Wars. I first watched these movies as a kid, and Star Wars still remains today a very enjoyable universe for me. The original three movies, I believe, will always be my favorites, with Empire Strikes Back being the absolute cream of the crop. But I also do enjoy the prequel trilogy and some aspects of the sequel trilogy. This may be a hot take, but The Last Jedi was my absolute favorite of the sequel trilogy. I loved so many of the concepts that story introduced and went with. And I did also enjoy the spin-offs with Rogue One and Solo. And I'm also including all of the shows that have been produced in the Star Wars universe, like the Clone Wars, Book of Boba Fett, The Mandalorian. Some of my favorite fictional characters come from this universe. Characters like Darth Vader, Darth Maul, Obi-Wan, so many others. Star Wars is an iconic franchise with just a violently toxic fan base. If I said on Twitter that I enjoy The Last Jedi or some other mild take about Star Wars, my comments section would probably be filled with death threats. Who knows, maybe the comment section of this video will be too. I love Star Wars so much, and I claim no affiliation with those fans, because it's just so stupid. Love what you enjoy, honestly. I feel myself going on a tangent. I'm gonna try and rein myself back in. If the sequel trilogy is your favorite trilogy, that's fine. Don't let anyone stop you. There was a time when people hated on the prequels, and now they're just as loved as the originals. Okay, I really need to move on before I make this whole video about Star Wars.
The Force is with you, young Skywalker. but you are not a Jedi yet.
Number 13 on my list goes to the Godzilla Monsterverse by Legendary Pictures. Sometimes there's no deeper meaning to my rankings other than that I want to see giant monsters fight other giant monsters, and that's what this one is. From the creature designs to the sound design, Legendary Pictures has a very strong take on Godzilla and King Kong. I suppose we just call him Kong right now, but you know what I mean. All the human stuff is incredibly boring, but when they finally get to the monster action, boy is that satisfying. It makes the whole experience worth it. And at this point in the Monsterverse, while I love the action sequences in all of the films, I have to say that Godzilla 2014 and Kong Skull Island are still my favorites. I do love the action of all of the movies, but there's something about a giant lizard hiding in the smoke of a burning city and a giant ape being used as an allegory for the Vietnam War that I just love so much. I eat that stuff for breakfast. And I also really enjoyed King of Monsters, which may be, at least visually, the best of the films so far. I wouldn't even consider this a guilty pleasure because I have no guilt over enjoying these movies as much as I do. I haven't seen the new one yet, but I am very excited. And at number 12, we have the Dark Knight trilogy. I love Christopher Nolan and I love Batman, so you all probably knew this was gonna be on the list. It also may seem like number 12 is far too low of a ranking, but it's pretty high when you consider all of the film franchises that I won't be talking about in this video. The casting was legendary and each new villain in the franchise challenged Batman in a new and deep way. And like many fans of the Dark Knight trilogy, my favorite entry would have to go to The Dark Knight. I know everyone says this, but there's a reason that Heath Ledger is just the GOAT. He was a perfect contrast to Christian Bale's Batman, and his performance was absolutely monumental. However, I don't want to overshadow the other villains in this franchise too. Cillian Murphy, Aaron Eckhart, and Tom Hardy all did amazing jobs. Nolan understood better than most people that the idea of Batman was far more important than the man himself. And this idea is woven throughout the story in a way that elevates the franchise far above other adaptations so far. One man can only be so effective at fighting crime, but as a symbol and as an idea, he becomes so much greater. And at number 11 on this list, we have the DCEU. Now, for the purposes of this list, I'm mainly referring to the trilogy of Man of Steel, Batman v Superman, and Zack Snyder's Justice League, and to a lesser extent, Wonder Woman and the first Aquaman movie. The DCEU started out so great, which really makes me wonder where it all went wrong. I absolutely love Zack Snyder's style, from his unique cinematography to his constant speed ramping. I swear, I feel like he makes movies just for me sometimes, and it's just incredible. And this is almost certainly a hot take, but the whole reason I fell in love with the character of Batman in the first place was because of Ben Affleck's portrayal of the character in Batman v Superman. His portrayal of Bruce's inner anger and trauma, combined with the visual influences from The Dark Knight Returns, automatically made him my favorite live-action Batman of all time. Of all the live-action Batman I have seen so far, his is the one I would be genuinely terrified of coming across if I was a criminal in Gotham City. He's just a brutal Hulk of a Batman and an absolute war machine in hand-to-hand combat. But my favorite entry in this franchise would have to be Zack Snyder's Justice League. Just a little side tangent, but now whenever I talk about how much I love Zack Snyder's Justice League, I can't help but thinking about that scene in the Barbie movie of all the Kens playing guitar on the beach. Like, he's so me. I know this is a really guy thing to enjoy, but like, let me have this, please. It is 4 hours long, but in that time you get a very well-crafted and compelling story. And all the new members of the Justice League are fully fleshed out and given this very heartfelt, emotional journey. It manages to juggle so many elements and land them all seamlessly. And even if we will never see a conclusion to this story, it was really cool to see Darkseid in live action. And by that I mean he was CGI, but you know what I mean. And now the DCEU is over. Gone not with a bang, but with just a tiny, pathetic whisper. I'm sad. I don't want to talk about this one anymore. There's so much spilled milk at Warner Brothers right now, and I have shed all of my tears. Now moving on to number 10 with the MCU. And again, I am mainly referring to the MCU from the first Iron Man movie to Avengers Endgame, although I have enjoyed some of the movies and TV shows that have come since. I love this stretch of the MCU so much because each entry actually mattered to the story. And many of the individual movies were really well done as well. There truly was something magical about that era of Marvel. You can't see it, but behind this camera on that wall, I've got 2 giant movie posters of Infinity War and Endgame. I'm not moving my camera, but you can imagine it. It's these posters. If I found them, then they're on the screen right now. Now, there have been countless debates in the present on how Marvel has potentially ruined the film industry, and it certainly has had a massive impact on how movies are made and even what kind of movies are made. But I just still hold a lot of love for this era of the MCU. There are so many entries to pick from that I love. I'm just gonna look down at my notes and list off a few. To name a few, we have all of the Avengers movies, Black Panther, Thor Ragnarok, Doctor Strange, all of the Guardians of the Galaxy movies. And I've also enjoyed some of the post-Endgame Marvel projects, like Multiverse of Madness, and some of the shows like WandaVision and Loki. These are 2 hills regarding the MCU that I'm willing to die on. The first, Doctor Strange Multiverse of Madness, is a goated movie, one of the best Marvel has done. And the other hill I'm willing to die on is that Moon Knight, the TV series, is the single greatest project that Marvel has done since Endgame. Not only is it a great MCU show, but it's also just great TV in general. Oscar Isaac gave an incredible performance that just does not get enough credit. The MCU may be hit or miss now, but back in that golden age, it was mainly hits. Maybe I'm biased, maybe it's because I was a kid and didn't think critically about movies back then, but like, I don't care. I love it.
Avengers! Assemble.
And at number 9, we have the Spiderverse movies. Now, I don't think this series requires any introduction or explanation, but I'm gonna get into it anyways. The animation is groundbreaking, and the story between both movies is nothing short of spectacular. Just like the spectacular Spider-Man, ha ha ha! Every single character given more than 5 minutes of screen time is done so well and has as much heart and soul poured into them as does the protagonist of this series, Miles Morales. It's so clear that from the writing to the animation process to the voiceovers, this series was made with just so much love and passion. We've only gotten 2 movies so far, but both were absolute bangers. It's impossible for me to pick a favorite because I just love both so much. And man, that Miguel O'Hara guy, man, boy, he just liked me for real, for real. Woo! And next at number 8 on the list, we have the Kung Fu Panda trilogy. I haven't seen the most recent one yet, so I'm talking about the trilogy. Although I am really excited about this next one. This is probably the singular most quoted franchise in my family. And boy, are so many quotes in this trilogy just absolutely legendary.
You guys see that?
It's called being awesome.
Everything that Jack Black touches seems to turn to gold, and that is especially true with the character of Poe. Not only is it a funny franchise, but they also have just great storytelling. And while the animation may not be as groundbreaking as the Spiderverse movies are, they still manage to pull off just absolutely gorgeous shots. If I had to pick a favorite, it has to be the original movie. It was just a perfect story done so well, and I love it for that. This trilogy is close to my heart, and it will continue to be for years to come. And maybe the fourth one will join that list. We will have to see. About that later. Not now, though. I'm recording a video.
My fist hungers for justice. That was my fist.
Number 7 is a bit of a cheat on my part, but it goes to Pacific Rim. It's a bit of a cheat because while this is a franchise, I adore the first movie, and I couldn't care less about the second movie. So I'm just going to be talking about the first one. I firmly believe from all that I've seen him in that John Boyega is a great actor. I just have not seen him in anything that I've really enjoyed. Except for The Last Jedi, which was the greatest of the Star Wars sequel films. The original Pacific Rim is unironically just a perfect movie for me. The only thing that I think is missing from the legendary Monsterverse is gigantic metal suits piloted by two humans who are linked telepathically to the suit for some reason. This really is basically just Guillermo del Toro's response to Neon Genesis Evangelion, and I mean that in the best way. This is an American Neon Genesis Evangelion, and by American I mean it takes place in China, Hong Kong more specifically, and stars an Aussie actor putting on an American accent. Or is he English? Hang on. I really need to do my research before I make jokes like that. What's his name? Charlie Hunnam, right? He's English. He's English, not Australian. It's the greatest American action film set in Hong Kong, starring an English guy playing an American dude with a really terrible American accent. The monster designs are perfect, and the action is whatever exists beyond perfection. I have talked in the past about films that shaped the history of cinema and films that have gone on to win Oscars, but none of them will be able to recreate the experience of being in that theater in 2013 as a child and watching a giant mech suit use a freighter like a baseball bat against a kaiju while an electric guitar riff plays in the background. Cinema truly did peak with Pacific Rim. And the casting was perfect, especially Idris Elba as a military figure in this movie. This movie is the opposite of a guilty pleasure for me. I'm proud to love this movie. And moving on to number 6, we have The Matrix. Now, this one, of course, is a cult classic, and there is a very good reason for that. Some of the camera techniques and visual effects in this series were groundbreaking when they were first released. The story itself is fantastic, and the action is nothing short of breathtaking.
You're breathtaking!
No, you're breathtaking. You are breathtaking, Keanu Reeves. Now, I hear a lot of people who talk about The Matrix praise the original film and then say that the others declined in quality, but I really don't think that that was the case at all. I think that the story weaving throughout the movies is a really solid one, and I think that the action, especially in the martial arts scenes, only improved as they went along. And after rewatching the movies recently, I think I actually enjoyed the finale of the third movie better than Avengers Endgame. But now, of course, as you all know, there is now a fourth movie as well. Now, while I still maintain that the ending of the third movie was a perfect ending and there was no need for any more Matrix movies whatsoever, I did still really enjoy the fourth one. It felt like a fantastic continuation of the story in a way that didn't ruin the magic of the original trilogy. I loved the cast of this movie, both the new and the returning actors, and I loved the story that they all came to tell. And like the Spiderverse, I find it hard to choose a favorite from these 4 movies. I love all of them just for very different reasons.
You think that's air you're breathing now?
We are now entering my top 5 favorite franchises of all time, with number 5, The Pirates of the Caribbean. Mainly the original trilogy, but also the 2 other movies to a lesser extent. Few movies walk the line of the physical and the mystical realm quite as well and quite as comically as these movies did. They are simply just well written and well executed. The score is legendary, of course, and all of the characters are fantastic. The villains are also so different and very compelling. I have wanted to make a video for forever on why I think Davy Jones from this trilogy is an underrated villain. And I may still do it in the future, so beware. And of course, Johnny Depp as Jack Sparrow is just perfect. From the comedy to the swagger to even the serious moments, he plays the role so well. I feel like I should be talking about this entry way more, but all I can really say is that I love this franchise so much. I do even like some aspects of the newer movies, particularly the villains. Ian McShane as Blackbeard is incredible, and I do love the design of Javier Bardem as Captain Salazar. The idea that he is a man drowned at sea, and so his hair forever moves as though he's underwater, is just a really cool detail. Pirates is a great franchise filled with the kind of movies that you really just don't see anymore.
That's got to be the best pirate I've ever seen.
So it would seem.
And at number 4 on the list, we have the John Wick franchise. In the realm of action/martial arts movies, John Wick is my absolute favorite. It's intense practical action combined with very stylized coloring and filmmaking. It might be sacrilege to place this higher than The Matrix, but for me, this is Keanu Reeves' best gunslinging martial arts franchise, even if it is more about guns and less about martial arts. And I love how they slowly build up this world of assassins over the course of 4 movies. They steadily introduce new elements, concepts, and people, but never lose the magic and the intrigue of this hidden world. It's also a very unique franchise because the inciting incident essentially gives John Wick a free pass to just do whatever he wants. Just after his wife dies, Viggo's son steals his nice car and kills the dog that was a gift from his dead wife. He then immediately goes out and kills 439 people, but we're okay with it because you don't kill dogs. I looked up how many people he canonically kills in the 4 John Wick movies. That is a real figure. He also has a very satisfying character journey. The murder of his dog is what initially brings him back into the fold, and over the course of the movies, he slowly begins to realize that there may not be a way for him to escape again. And this idea culminates in the 4th movie where he finally finds his peace. It's such a great story, and I just want to inject it into my veins.
And what style?
Italian.
How many buttons?
2.
Trousers?
Tapered.
How about the lining?
Tactical.
Now entering the top 3 with number 3 on our list, The Godfather. Because technically, since this is a series of films, it falls under the purview of this list. And of course, I'm mainly talking about part 1 and part 2, because part 3, we don't talk about it. We just don't talk about it. This is considered the definitive mafia story for a reason. And again, whenever I talk about how much I love these films, I just think of the Kens strumming guitar on a beach. Shut up, I love The Godfather. I'm allowed. Why is the Sigma community not latched on to Michael Corleone from those movies? I could see him becoming the next Literally Me character. It's the fantastic story of two powerful mob bosses, a father and son, and how the son's weaknesses led to the downfall of an empire. It's a story of family and the betrayal of family in exchange for power. Marlon Brando, Al Pacino, and Robert De Niro all gave nothing short of career-defining performances. This is probably stereotypical film bro of me to say, but the Godfather movies were unironically what changed my perception of what cinema could be. I had a class in high school where we learned how to shoot and edit videos. That was one of the main components in my life that launched me into becoming a filmmaker myself. And it is in that class that I watched The Godfather for the first time. And of course, that was also one of the many elements that led to me going to school for film and becoming a filmmaker myself. The movies definitely take their time, but they are all the better for it.
And if by chance an honest man like yourself should make enemies, then he would become my enemies. And then they would fear you.
And number 2 on the list goes to a rather new franchise, and that is Dune. By that I mean that the movies are new. I know that the story is old. I know this has been said on social media so much since Dune Part 2 came back, but from the bottom of my heart, cinema is so back. This is the franchise of this film's generation. Kids in the coming decades will ask us what it was like to see these films in theaters, and I, for one, will not be able to find the words to describe the sheer awe that I experienced from both movies. Denis' love for the story of Dune permeates through every second of both these films' runtimes. The set and costume design, the practical and the special effects, the shots, the score, everything is just perfect, plain and simple. And I've said this a lot in the video at this point, but the cast was just genuinely perfect. I was immediately sucked into the same love for this universe that Denis has, and it inspired me to go back and read the books for myself. As of recording this video, I just finished reading the sequel to Dune, Dune Messiah. Spoiler-free, spoiler alert, you are not ready for that movie when it comes out. Unless you've read the books, in which case, you know. This is a series that inspired the majority of modern sci-fi, and it is easy to see why after reading the books and after seeing these films by Denis. It's everything that I love about sci-fi, but turned up to 11. And I definitely want to make so many more videos on Dune and the universe, so expect all of those in the future at some point. I'm not hyperfixated, you are.
An animal caught in a trap will gnaw off its own leg to escape. What will you do?
Dune really is a perfect film franchise to me, but as you all probably knew, number 1 was going to go to a film franchise that to me is even more perfect. And so at number 1 and my favorite film franchise of all time, we have the Lord of the Rings trilogy. Honestly, my explanation on this one could be really short. It does all of the amazing things that I described about Dune, except there's over 10.5 hours of it. If you watch the extended edition, which I personally do. You don't have to, I'm not going to gatekeep Lord of the Rings, but I love the extended cut. The Lord of the Rings is to the fantasy genre what Dune is to the sci-fi genre. Peter Jackson took Tolkien's story and created a cinematic experience that is just incredible. It exists whatever beyond perfection is. The costumes are beautifully made and the landscapes are breathtaking. This trilogy is basically a day-long travel ad for New Zealand. And it absolutely worked. I absolutely need to go to New Zealand at some point. I don't care about anything else. I just want to visit the Shire. Screw Patrick Bateman. The hobbits are just like me, for real, for real. I aspire to that life. This is a trilogy that I will rewatch quite frequently with my family. We will take an entire day, set an entire day aside, and watch all of the films back to back. And darn it if I'm not gonna mention how perfect the casting was. And the music is just absolutely enchanting. This is the absolute perfect trilogy, and one of the many reasons I fell in love with cinema to begin with. And if I find an excuse to talk about this trilogy in depth on this channel, you best believe I'm gonna do that.
I think I'm quite ready for another adventure.
And with that said, these are my favorite movie franchises of all time. Throughout this list, we've had many different kinds of franchises, but each contains something about cinema that I love so much. And so with all that said, thank you so much for watching. In channel news, we just passed 4,000 subs, which is of course crazy, and my Shin Godzilla video is now at over 200,000 views, which, thank you. That's a lot. I don't know how to deal with that number. Another thing to keep you updated on is I'm going to be flying out to BC in a couple weeks to meet up with some friends and do some stuff. So if I don't upload another video for a while, you know why. I'll get a video out as soon as I can, but I'm not bringing any equipment with me for this trip. And of course, a huge shout out goes out to my patrons, Sean, Happy the Knife, and my top tier patrons, RD and Snowy. Thank you all so much for supporting me and the content and supporting my dream of hopefully doing this for you all full time. Thank you so much for watching. I'm going to get to editing this video right away, and I will see you next time for another great video that will probably be Dune themed. Spoiler alert, I have a lot of Dune videos that I'm working on. Again, I'm not hyperfixated, you are. So I'll see you when I get those up, but until then, have a fantastic week, or however long it's gonna be till I see you guys next, and I'll see you then. I should really just do my regular outro, because I don't even know what I'm saying at this point. And cut. Of course, as soon as I say cut, the furnace cuts off. The furnace has been on for this entire video. Okay, bye now.